There are literally thousands of different combinations of PC hardware that you could purchase to build a gaming PC, and because of that, it can get a little overwhelming. So today, what I've done is I have pieced together what I would consider to be like the perfect system. The system that checks every single box on what you would want from a high-powered gaming PC. Now, what do I mean when I say that it's going to check every single box? Well, box number one is performance. We're gonna have a strong 1440p gaming system. 1080p is fine, but we're headed into 1440p. Everyone's kind of ditching 1080p, and 1440p is slowly but surely becoming the new norm. So we're gonna have a system that's going to get over 60 FPS in some of the most demanding games that are out there at 1440p resolution. Box number two is cost. Obviously, everything is getting more and more expensive, so what we're going to try and do is make sure that this is pretty decently affordable. For a 1440p gaming PC, you're looking at around $1,500 usually, but spoiler alert, this system is going to look like a $2,000 computer, but it's going to come in at under $1,500. Box number three, I just kind of touched on. We're going to have an extremely aesthetically pleasing build. I don't know about you, but if I'm going to spend over $1,000 on anything, I also want it to look really good. Except property taxes. You pay property taxes, that doesn't look all that darn good. Box number four is upgradability. We want a system that can grow and evolve as video games grow and evolve, and as our taste in video games grows and evolves. So we want a system that we can swap in and out parts as the new hardware continues to come out. And box number five is resale value. Obviously, no video game system stays with you forever. At some point, you are going to want to sell this thing, and we want to try to make sure that when that time does come, we can get the maximum amount of money for our system to upgrade our next gaming PC. And with the parts that I've put together today, I think we can absolutely resell this system after a few years for a pretty decent amount of money. Now, obviously, your tastes might be different than mine. You might think that there's different hardware that you would have rather put inside of this build. And don't worry, I'm gonna do my very best to justify my decisions as we put this thing together. So to start off this entire build, we're going to need the motherboard, the CPU, the RAM, and the SSD. So let's go ahead and start by talking about our motherboard here. Now, it's easy to get hung up on B850 boards, X870 boards, X870E boards. I know that it can get confusing, and you may want the latest and greatest of anything, but I can promise you, if I took this B650 Eagle board compared to the B850 Eagle board and I built the entire system, you would not at all in any way, shape, or form be able to tell me the difference, and the price difference is pretty astronomical. Now, the B650 Eagle board is of tremendous value. It comes in at like $158, which nowadays is actually a pretty cheap price for a motherboard, since most of them are like $180 to over $200 for at least the newest generation of stuff. But this is going to provide you all of the functionality that you need to continue to play games and continue to do whatever you want. For anything more than a B650 right now is you just trying to have the best of everything, and you don't even need it because you wouldn't even notice the difference anyway. Now, the argument can be made that you're trying to overclock the living crap out of your CPU, so you need a beefy board. I can promise you, you can overclock your CPU on this board just fine, just like you would with an X870E board. There's no game out there that's going to fully utilize PCIe 5.0 anyways. Now, there is another argument that we could make, and is this like the loudest plastic ever made? Goodness. Pew! Now, the other argument that you could make is that the PCIe slot on here is Gen 4, it's not Gen 5, and Gen 5 is what the newer graphics cards are on. But there isn't a game that's fully utilizing Gen 5 anyways, and there won't be for a little while. So we don't really have to worry about that. You're not going to lose any performance from your graphics card with this board right here. So in short, about 90% of people who want to build a gaming PC would be just fine with a board just like this. Now, our beautiful B650 here is an AMD board with an AM5 socket, so we can utilize some of the best chips that AMD has to offer. And the chip that we're going to be going with for today's build is the Ryzen 5 7500F. Now there are a few of you watching who may not have ever heard of a Ryzen 5 7500F, and it's because it's not really available here in the United States. What a Ryzen 5 7500F is a Ryzen 5 7600X. It just doesn't have the integrated graphics that the 7600X does have. Now obviously this isn't the newest gen of, Ryzen 5 chips. The 9600X is the newest generation of Ryzen 5s, but when you look at the performance difference between the 9600X, the 7600X, and the 7500F, they're really, really similar, and this is an unlocked CPU, so I can overclock this CPU to get even more performance from it. And the beauty of it, it's an AM5 CPU. You could easily, in the future, if you come into a little bit of money, you could swap in an X3D chip and be off to the races. But once we get to the end, I will show you the performance from this system so that you guys can see for yourselves that this is a tremendous option. Oh, and I only paid $135 for this. Brand new. So let's go ahead and get this CPU put into its socket. With the amount of computers that I have put together, you would think that like the scariness of adding a CPU to your motherboard would have kind of worn off, but that's not true at all. Frightens me every time. Plus the tension here just really gets you. But that's that. All done. So now let's talk about the RAM for a second. For most gaming PCs, 32 gigs of DDR5 memory at 6,000 megatransfers per second is plenty. You're not going to need more than that. But as games are continuing to get more and more intense, I know that they're starting to eat up more and more of that RAM. And I'm trying to make it sure that this PC is future-proofed for quite some time and is able to play anything out there, including like heavy VR and simulation games. And to do that, I picked up 64 gigs of this Trident Z memory. 2 sticks of 32 gigs each is gonna be plenty enough to make sure that this system has no problem doing anything that we want our computer to do. Plus, this is like some of the best looking RAM that there is. Not only is it 64 gigs, but it's 64 gigs of RGB RAM, and this Trident Z RAM is just beautiful looking RAM. Now there really is only one issue in my mind when it comes to DDR5 memory, and it's that you can't really get like strong stability while running 4 sticks of DDR5. 2 sticks, you can get your full speed, but if you run 4, you do have to lower the speed down a little bit so that you have stability from your board, which is unfortunate, but I mean, still gonna look really good with 2 sticks. And lastly, for setting up this system, we need our storage drive. Now for this build, I went with the same drive that I go with for a ton of different budget builds. I went with a 1 terabyte Clev Crass M.2. It's a Gen 4 NVMe. It's all the speed you're gonna need when you want a game. It's got 1 terabyte of storage. Now 1 terabyte, I know that a lot of people are starting to get to the point where 1 terabyte is not enough storage space for people, but it's a good start. Later on down the road, there are 2 more M.2 slots in here. You could add in additional storage if this doesn't end up being enough for you, which I would completely understand. In a perfect world, if we had all the money that we wanted, I would go with 2 terabytes. But because this is such a tremendous value, coming in at like $54, how are you gonna argue with this particular SSD if you're just building something that's a little bit more affordable? I do always like that this SSD comes with like this little sticker on here. It's a little heat spreader if you don't have a heat spreader on your M.2 slot, which we do, so we're not gonna use this, but I do like that they include that with this. And I'm not prepared. I need to go get a screwdriver. I've built over 100 gaming PCs in the past 3 years, and I still cannot figure out how to be prepared. Now there is one more thing that we're going to be adding to our motherboard before we put the motherboard inside of the case that I have chosen for today's build, and that is the AIO. Now a lot of people like to completely mount their AIO to the board before they put the board in their case, and I absolutely think that's like the worst way to do things ever, because then you just have tubes and an AIO floating all over the place while you're trying to mount down your motherboard and get everything situated. I think that it just sucks. I just like to mount that when I have the board already in the case. So what we're gonna do is we're going to put the mounting hardware on our board, and then we'll add the AIO later. And here's the AIO. Now I am positive there is somebody watching who wants me to justify the fact that I chose a 360 millimeter AIO for today's build rather than something like a high quality air cooler that would have come in at probably half the cost of this and would have been just fine for cooling a Ryzen 5 7500F. Honestly, I could throw a 9800 X3D in here and still get quality cooling from an air cooler. The reason that I went with the 360 millimeter AIO is because it helps check off 2 of the boxes that we need to check off for today's build: the aesthetic aesthetically pleasing box and the resale value. Listen, I sell a lot of computers, so that makes me particularly aware of what people want to have inside of their PCs. Me personally, I love a good air cooler. The reliability from them is just unmatched, and they cool your CPUs just fine unless you have something crazy inside of your system. But I know for a fact that people love 360 millimeter AIOs inside of their systems. It helps sell computers all day. And the fact that this thing has a pretty large screen in it looks really great. And once somebody sees that in a listing on like places like Facebook Marketplace, that immediately captures their attention and they want it because there's a screen inside of the system. Now you can go for like a more cheap AIO. They have lots of AIOs that don't have screens on them that come in under $100. I think there's one that's like $56 by Thermalright, and I love Thermalright as a brand, but if you want a screen on there, you're gonna at least be paying around $80. And if you want like a really cool screen, like the one you get on this one, then you're gonna be paying a little bit more. Like this is a much larger screen than what you're gonna find on like a Thermalright AIO. It just looks beautiful. So our motherboard, CPU, RAM, and SSD are installed correctly. They are ready to get put inside of the case that I chose for today's build, which is this beautiful thing. Oh yeah. Magic. I love editing. This is the C3 T500 case by PC Cooler. Why can't they name it fun things like this is the Razor Blade? I guess that really wouldn't make any sense. Hold on, I gotta bring the desk up a little bit. There we go. So this case is manufactured by PC Cooler. It's the same company that makes the AIO that we are using for today's build. And I liked this PC case because it gives you pretty much everything that you want at a lower price. Now it is a dual chamber case, meaning that there is a place for your power supply in the back to hide all your cables. And it is an aquarium style PC case, meaning there's front glass here, plus the side panel here, giving you an unrestricted view of all of your hardware inside of your build. And it does come with 6 included fans, all for $110, which is a pretty good deal for what you're getting. Now, the only issue I have with this case is the same issue that I've had with lots of case manufacturers. They make these cases, but they don't like sell the fans individually. So this case comes with 6 included very specific style fans, and I like to have all my fans matched. So I actually had to hunt to find similar fans to put inside of this build so that I can attach them to the AIO so that I can have a PC case that is just 100% full of the exact same fan. Now there are cases that you can purchase that do have the full like 9 fans that you would need in order to make sure that you can attach your AIO to them. They're a little bit more expensive, and because they give you the fans, if you find a cheap one, you're really getting a cheap case. What we're getting here is a pretty high quality case, and we get a built-in fan hub for all of our fans inside of here. It's just a tremendous value at $110 for what we're getting. So let's go ahead and get these back panels removed so we can start putting this motherboard inside of our case. I also love that this case comes with dust filters. A lot of these cheaper cases, especially if they come with a whole bunch of fans, they don't give you any dust filters. So you're just allowing dust and everything to go straight inside of your PC. I like that this one came with dust filters so that I can make sure that the inside of our computer is looking real good at all times, because again, we have to check that box of aesthetically pleasing, and it needs to stay that way. All right, so let's go ahead and get our motherboard put inside of our case here. I definitely need to watch all the fans here because there is not a lot of clearance at the bottom of the board. I don't want to hit any of those fans in case I have to move them around like I'm doing right now on the back IO. There is no space at the bottom here to plug anything in. I gotta show you this. So I screwed the motherboard down with one screw just so I could lift the case up so you could see, but look how there's no clearance. It's just the bottom of the case here. So I'm gonna have to make sure to plug all of these in first before I put the motherboard in, because there's just there's no way I'll get anything through there. So that's gotta happen first. I don't know why they manufactured it like that. They should just put it, just a slightly higher, and you would have had at least a little bit of clearance down here, but we're just gonna have to make sure to plug all this in first. So typically I don't think that this would be a massive issue. I can make this work. The one thing that I am worried about is that when you run an AIO with the screen does connect to your USB header on your board, and the USB headers on this board are all at the bottom, and we don't have the AIO in yet. So we're gonna have to figure out how to run that through later. Hopefully it's not an issue. I don't think it will be, because there is a small clearance. I could probably run it down the bottom here and get it in. So we're just gonna see what happens. But luckily it's just the HD audio and your power pins here, and the power pins are usually really, really thin. So now we got our cables out. Let's go ahead and see if this is gonna fit. All right, yeah. That works. All right, let's get this mounted down and let's continue. All right, so that was a little bit more work than you typically get when it comes to putting a motherboard inside of a case, but I think that it looks really good. This board matches the design of this case really well, and I think once everything's in there and it's lit up, this thing's gonna look pretty awesome. Now there is some wiring down here that you really can't hide because of these fans, but what I have planned for later on in this build will definitely hide that up. So now what we want to do is we want to add in our power supply. The reason I want to add in the power supply now is because we're going to be putting the AIO inside of here, and I want to make sure that the CPU power is plugged in before I put in the AIO. It's going to take up quite a bit of the space up here, and then what I really don't want to be doing is trying to plug everything in by like sliding my fingers through this little corner here. I'd have no room to work in. So we're going to make sure that that's plugged in first before we go ahead and add in the AIO. So no PC build is done without a little bit of drama. And for today's drama, it's our power supply. I always get people in the comment section who hate the fact that I'm going to put this 750 watt power supply by Airs Game inside of this system. Now it isn't uncommon when I use this particular power supply that I get a comment in my comment section saying that I should have spent $20 more and gotten the MSI, mag power supply. Now I have used that power supply 3 different times, and 2 times they broke and I had to replace them. I have used this power supply over 30 times in builds, and with the 2-year warranty that I offer on all PCs that I sell, I've never once had to replace this particular power supply. So I'm going to continue to use it, and I'm going to continue to promote it because it hasn't once failed me. Now this is a semi-modular power supply, meaning your 24 power and your CPU power are just going to be attached here. You do have the ability to add in your PCIe and all of those cables later. They are right here. Well, let's go ahead and get this mounted into the back of the case here. Now we don't necessarily need a 750 watt power supply for this build. 650 watts would have been just fine, but I went with the 750 watt because remember, one of the boxes that we need to check is the upgradability path. Now I don't know what you would want to upgrade this to, but to have a little bit more of a power supply than what's needed is never a bad thing. Never fails. My desk just continues to get more and more cluttered as you continue to build. All right, so now it's time to get our CPU cooler put in here, and we're gonna need these tiny little boxes for our cooler here. Actually, we only need 3 of them, so just take one of these and throw these down here. Now, even though this is made by PC Cooler, and this is a PC Cooler case, the fans on this AIO are not the same as the ones in the case. Now, that may not be a big issue to you or a big deal. It is to me. I don't like it. I will never not see it. And I am somebody who likes to have all my fans to look exactly the same. Now, inside of these boxes are these tiny little fans, and they match these fans really well. Now, I can't find these particular fans, these exact fans, but these are so very similar that I don't think you're gonna even notice. So we're gonna be putting these fans on our AIO so that we have a completely matching build. Plus, as an added bonus, each one of these fans comes with this little ARGB controller, which I'm not gonna need, but I purchased these like crazy for builds with older generation hardware so that I can control the ARGB in them. So now I just got a whole bunch of these for like nothing. All these fans were like $6 each, and I got 4 of them. So now I have 4 new ARGB controllers. Now, do I recommend changing out the fans? Probably not. The fans that are included with this AIO are probably much better for this AIO, especially seeing as how they kind of cover more of the area, making it a full box. This is kind of rounded, but I don't care. I'm gonna change them anyways. Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's a good thing that I'm changing out these fans. Listen to this. This fan is busted. Can you imagine if this is what you heard the whole time your fan was spinning? I'd lose my mind. Now, obviously this isn't typical. Issues with manufacturing and shipping definitely happen, but it's a good thing we're changing it out anyways. I gotta say, I think that looks pretty good. It's gonna match the included fans really well. I think it's gonna be really cool looking. Let's go ahead and get it in the case. So let's go ahead and put some thermal paste here on our CPU cooler so we can finish mounting this thing up. Now, I usually just put one line down the middle here, and then the heat will end up making sure that everything spreads out, plus the pressure that you put on it from mounting down your pump head. You're not gonna have any issues. And one really important thing to remember is to remove this piece of plastic. If you don't take this off, the computer's gonna let you know a little later that you didn't. Let's go ahead and get this put on here. Push that down. Oh God. And now we can go ahead and we can add in our screen. Jeez, that thing is huge. So now we are at the best part of every single PC build, the graphics card. And for today's build, I picked up this RTX 5070. Now, a lot of you guys might disagree with the fact that I chose a 5070 for today's build, but I did so for a reason. Now, the 5070 is an excellent 1440p option. It's gonna give you fantastic gameplay, and I was able to pick this card up for $585 currently. The next step up would be like a 9070 XT or a 5070 Ti, but once you get into that level, you are paying around $750 to $800 depending on which model and which card you're going with. And because they don't make NVIDIA's 4000 series anymore, you would have to jump back a generation on AMD side just to meet the performance level of this 5070. And my favorite part about this card is it checks more of our boxes. It checks our performance box, it checks our aesthetic box because this is a very cool looking card, and it checks our resale value box. Remember, I sell a lot of computers, and I can promise you right here and right now, an NVIDIA card is going to help sell your system way faster than an AMD card is, even if the AMD card outperforms the NVIDIA card. Now, because we are going with the heavy aesthetic look, we're not gonna be putting this card directly into the case. I want to see this. I don't wanna see this. So because of that fact, we have a vertical mount by Coolmaster. It's this massive thing right here. We're gonna be putting this inside of here to give us that extremely cool look that, you know, everybody loves. The vertical mounted GPUs, just a great design feature. Now, because of this vertical GPU mount, that is the exact reason why I didn't pick up cable extensions for today's build. A lot of times you will see that I pick up cable extensions. Most of the time they're black because that way I can control the RGB and I'm not set to a specific color path. But the reason I didn't get them for this build is because the only one that you're gonna see is the 24 pin, and that's this one right here, which is already black. So I don't need to add in any cable extensions. You're not going to see any of the other cables because the CPU power is hidden behind the AIO, and because this is going to be vertically mounted, the power is going to be coming out and behind here, so it really doesn't matter. But let's go ahead and get this vertical GPU mount in here because we are getting close to being able to fire this thing on, and I can't wait to see what this is going to look like. So I have everything inside of the case now. This thing is looking, it's looking pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Now all we gotta do is fix this little rat's nest of cables. I know most people don't care. I honestly, like 50% care. I'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit, slap the panels on there, and then we'll do the big reveal. Man, that's good looking. Boys, what we just created, it should be on all of your desks. You know what? Let's montage it. Roll the clips. So that aesthetically pleasing box, check. Just in time for Halloween too. This thing is just pretty, man. I'm really starting to like orange a whole lot more in my PCs. So now let's go ahead and let's check off that performance box as well and go over a little bit of the gameplay that I was able to get from this absolutely stunning gaming PC. Now keep in mind, all games were tested at their maximum graphical settings, as high as they will go, and at 1440p. So starting off with something pretty easy, I loaded up Forza 5. Now I wanted to see how well this GPU performed with no upscaling at all, just pure pure rasterization from the card, and we were able to get an absolutely stunning 120 FPS average. Now, when I turned DLSS on and set it to quality, we're able to crank out an average of 170 FPS. I gotta say, we're off to a good start. Testing out a new game that is pretty taxing on a system, I played a little bit of Mecha Break. Now, this is one of those games that has a cinematic graphic feature, and I set it to cinematic. Now, obviously that really hits a computer very hard, but we were able to get an average of 106 FPS. Now, this next game I got for free a while back when I purchased something from Newegg. The game is called Unknown 9 Awakening, and I have been told that it is pretty taxing on a PC, so I went ahead and ran the game's included benchmark, and we were able to get a very beautiful 178 FPS average. Now, stepping into games that are a little bit more intense, I went ahead and played Doom: The Dark Ages at the game's Ultra Nightmare preset, and we're getting a really nice 91 FPS average. And lastly, I went ahead and tested Space Marine 2, because that game really hammers a PC. Now, I was doubtful that we were gonna get a steady FPS that was over 60, because this game is just so demanding, but our average came out to 71 FPS, which was really nice to see. So performance, check. Aesthetically pleasing? like mega check. Let's talk about cost now. To put this entire system together, it only cost me $1,409, and that's with prices the way that they are now. You gotta keep in mind that if you are gonna follow any of the links down below in the description to take a look at any of the items, because I will provide links to everything that I use to put together this absolutely stunning gaming PC. Just understand that prices change all the time. I have no control over that, but currently this is a $1,409 build, and it is, I think it's worth every penny. So now let's check off upgradability. This is an easy system to upgrade. It's an AM5 system, so you could easily throw a 9800 X3D in here and maybe a 9070 XT and have an all AMD system that is an absolute monster. But as it sits right now, you don't even really need to upgrade this thing at all. This thing would be fine for the next 3 to 5 years without you even upgrading a single piece of this PC. Unless you're someone like me, in which case this thing would probably change 30 times in that 5 years. So now let's go ahead and check off our very last box, which is resale value. Not everybody wants to keep the same PC and keep upgrading the same PC for a long period of time. If you're like me, then you'd like to just go ahead and sell your system and then start over with all brand new hardware. There's absolutely no shame in that. And I sell PCs with 3 to 5 year old, 5 generations old hardware all the time, and I sell them for like $800 or $900. And you could easily sell this thing for $800 or $900 in 3 to 5 years, meaning that you were able to use this computer for only $500. Now, if you did enjoy this video at least a little bit, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I absolutely love making new friends, and if you want to be a friend with benefits, please consider joining my YouTube channel membership program. Every time I say that, it continues to sound super creepy. But hey, be a member. I'm pretty fun. And if you like this build as much as I do, please hit the like button. It helps push this video to more people so that they can see this absolutely amazing PC. And as always, no matter where you are in the world, I hope that you are having the most fantastic day, and I'm gonna see you right here for the next video.